Welcome to the Captain's Lounge Studios. We're doing Rational Alchemy with Phil Kelley, who is running for the Senate District 13 right here in Colorado. Phil, welcome back to the studios.
Oh, good afternoon, Nigel. It's always good to be here with you and the rest of the crew.
Give us a quick introduction of who you are and what you're trying to do.
All right. My name's Phil Kelley, and I'm running for the State Senate District 13. It's the area that is all of Greeley and goes all the way down to Fort Lupton and down to Brighton. It's a pretty good size area, and it's a very conservative Republican area, has been for many years. But hopefully with good ideas, good candidates, and actually getting out there and solve issues, we can actually change this.
And I believe you've got a rather important piece of news to tell us, an endorsement by some sort of unknown person who lives up in Vermont.
Yes.
Why don't you fill us in a little bit about that?
Well, yesterday morning, I was eating breakfast, and I had my phone sitting there next to me, and it was starting to blow up. So I picked it up, and I looked, and I was absolutely stunned. I had just gotten Bernie Sanders' endorsement from his organization, Our Revolution's national endorsement to run for the State Senate District 13. I am the only senator in the state of Colorado that they've endorsed because I believe I follow the same pattern, the same belief system as Bernie Sanders, someone who wants to make America great from what it is today. Today we have a society that is so out of kilter, out of balance. We need to have some common sense, logic, ideas in our society, not just everything based on profit.
And of course, you hate being called a politician.
Yes, I
mean, really dislike it.
Yes, I am not a politician. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a rich businessman. I'm simply a working person just like you, who's worked in a factory at General Motors for 30 years. I know what it's like to go home and to tell your family that you've been laid off and you don't know what you and your family are going to do. I know what it's like to have sick children, but your boss demands you go in and you have to make a decision about doing what's right for your children and making your boss happy. I know what this is like. I'm not, like I said, not a rich man, but I need to bring the values of America to the state capitol.
Even though you hate being called a politician, we're going to have to talk a little bit of politics.
Oh, all right. We can handle that.
We can handle that, though. So number one on our list is education. It seems to have taken a real bad turn under Betsy DeVos.
Well, right now here in Colorado, I think the very basic thing that we need to do right off the bat is to understand that it's a series of decisions. It's a philosophy of government and governance that's going to make a huge difference. And that's over a long period of time. Just like the trickle-downers have done to us, we've seen what it's done to our society, what it's done to education, jobs, and all the issues we talk about today. We need to be able to look back and say, enough is enough. And our education has gotten so bad, we're down to 4 days a week. There's many schools right here in Colorado that have decade-old textbooks. We've got a lot of problems, and it needs to be solved step by step. And I'll just give you, I think, where we really need to start. Tabor is like handcuffs on the legislature, and that's why it was put there by the ultra-right so many years ago. Since Tabor's come in, we have gone from 25th, right in the center of the country, down to 49th in teacher pay, in teacher ability to teach.
Before you do that, Phil, let us know what Tabor is.
Tabor.
There could well be people that have never heard that word before.
Tabor is a law that was put in, like I said, about a decade ago. It was titled perfectly like they always title them, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. A taxpayer's bill of rights, the taxpayers they were talking about are the super rich and the powerful. That's why they put it in. Because that end of it guarantees that we cannot pay our teachers what they need. We can't raise the money because every time we try to raise taxes, it has to go for referendum to the entire state. So therefore, it makes it nearly impossible to do. By the elimination of Tabor is the first thing that has to be done to try to straighten out so many things, but specifically right now, education.
So, sorry, I interrupted you about the teachers.
Yes.
Because I know the teachers get a lot of blame for the state of education, which is totally unfair.
Simple answers again, and this is what they prey on, simple answers. Let's try to use some common sense here. There's always been the ideal of the American family. One of the partners at home taking care of children, putting them off to school, raising the family. That's gone today. They say a middle-class America? Well, excuse me, a middle-class America is where one person is working and provides enough income to be able to have a decent life, to be able to go on vacation a couple of weeks a year, be able to buy a car, once in every 3 or 4 years, to be able to do so many things we used to be able to do in this country. Now what we have is a situation where people are working 10, 12 hours a day, both partners, and the children are latchkey children. How in the world can you possibly expect these children to go to class and learn when they aren't taught anything at home because they're latchkey children? Their parents are busting their butts just trying to put a roof over their head and food on the table, and they are too tired and too worn out and know they have to do it the next day. They're doing the best they can, but we're not helping in any way. We need to create a society where children are valued. Once children are valued, then education is so important to our entire future. So it's not the teachers. The teachers are doing the very best they can under incredibly difficult circumstances, and I will go to Denver and make their task a lot easier and make things better for the Colorado families.
I mean, what a lot of people seem to forget is the fact that it is the education of the kids today that affects what is going to happen tomorrow. And of course, one of the things that worries me the most about living in this country is the fact that science has now been given such a diminishing role in education.
Oh, yes.
It's as if now everyone wants to look down on science, totally forgetting that it was science that has given us everything around us.
What we're doing right now was not made by high school dropouts. It was made by PhDs.
That's correct.
It was made by scientists that developed all of this incredible technology. To maintain it and to build a future, we have to have educated people.
Well, none of this equipment that we use in here was created by the Catholic Church. I will say the one thing about the Catholics understand that science is important because they got beaten up so often in the 15th and 16th centuries over it.
Oh, yes.
And the Catholic Church really does believe in science and believes in the progress of science. But over here in America, unfortunately, that is not true. And science is looked down upon and poo-pooed and told that it's rubbish and all. Oh, don't get me going on this.
I personally believe that that's intentional. It's intentional by my opponents. They want to try to dumb down America and not give people the education that they deserve and need to maintain a first-class world society. How can you possibly maintain that if you don't have the education? But they aren't worried about that because technology and robotics is replacing working people. Let's just take McDonald's, for example. Here 2 years ago, the CEO of McDonald's said, in 10 years, I will have 90% fewer workers. If you walk into any McDonald's, you'll see the kiosks already showing up. Order your own. At the end of this next 10 years, you multiply that onto so many jobs. Tens of millions of people will not have employment. We need to have a seat at this table called society. Pull up a chair, sit down, and demand our rights.
Well, I mean, you mentioned it last time about, in fact, the biggest cause of job loss in the States has absolutely nothing to do with the Chinese or the Indians or whomever. It has to do with automation.
Yes.
And you pointed out, GM used to have a paint shop.
Yep.
I think it was 300 people working 3 shifts, and they've now got, what was it, 5?
18.
Oh,
18 technicians per shift. These are highly skilled people that are robotic technicians. If we can build society from the bottom up, That's a just, fair society when workers have a seat at the table. The society we have today, and it's been created over the last 40 years through the trickle-down, that society is inherently unjust. I was stunned the other day when I heard that 3 people in this country, 3, have 50% of all the wealth in this country. Jeff Bezos makes, I heard the other day, $350,000 a day. And we have people that are homeless, veterans. We need a society that benefits all.
You look at the top corporations, and here we're talking more within the consumer market fields,
Right.
the Walmarts, the Amazons, etc.
Right.
There are people working at those companies that need food stamps to live.
Exactly. Corporate
Hold
welfare.
on. There is something very, very wrong in that situation when you look at the amount of money that those companies are banking, again, on a daily basis.
I'd like to know if these corporations and these people that make these decisions, I'd like to know in their Bible if Matthew 25 is even in their Bible.
A lot of these people don't even look at the New Testament. They're mired in the Old Testament.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
I've made that comment before.
We need to have a society that is moral, not based on morality, not just profit.
Let's talk about healthcare. I know you and Bernie are very, very close on what you feel here, that you want a universal system.
Yes.
Let's expand upon that a little bit. I'll tell you why, because although I know that America needed Obamacare desperately,
It was a good first step.
it was a good first step. I did not believe it would work, because unless you control the back-end costs, there is absolutely no way at all of controlling the front-end costs. Where do you sit?
Well,
What do you think we should do?
I absolutely agree with Bernie Sanders and our revolution that it is a moral imperative. We have to have our values, and a value is we live in the richest nation in the world. But yet we have over 30 million people who don't have health insurance. Many, many millions more that have substandard health insurance. And they're being charged incredible amounts for very little service. We need to throw away with this system of insurance companies literally taking 35% right off the top and sticking it in their pockets. You want to talk about make a difference? Do away with insurance companies. Let's do the way Social Security does. They've got a 2% overhead. I like that a whole lot better. And to be able to turn around and give what people deserve in this society, good health care for all people, not just for those who can afford it. They always talk about rationing of health care. That's what will happen. Well, excuse me, a dollar bill is rationing of health care. If you don't have that dollar bill, you don't get health care.
Correct. Also, the rationing of healthcare came about because of misinformation.
Yes.
On how Canada does it, Great Britain does it,
yes.
France does it, Germany does it, and the list goes on and on.
That's
and
a scare
on.
word. It's socialism.
Well, remember when they came out with, what was it, the Death Squad? Not the
Oh,
Death
yeah,
Squad,
yeah.
What was it?
The death panels.
Death panel.
Death panels. Oh, I love that one. That was so good.
Absolute,
Yeah.
total and utter nonsense.
Yeah. We have death panels, though. Before this, we had death panels.
Yes.
It was the dollar bill. You don't have the dollar bill, you die.
You die.
Period.
Which is why when, we were doing our pre-chat outside, I
Right.
said, unless it was, if the National Health Service hadn't have been there for me, I would never be around today, because I had to have open heart surgery when I was 11 years old. So we're going right back to the dark days
Oh, yes.
of open heart surgery.
Right.
In fact, when they discovered what was wrong with me, they had to invent a really fully functional heart-lung machine. They had to discover that hypothermia could be used for slowing down the heart, and what you needed to do to keep things stable for the patient, and the list goes on.
Right.
Okay? This was all done under the National Health Service.
Yes.
Cost of my parents? Nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Yes.
If I had been born in America, there is no way my dad, manager of Woolworths, could have be able to afford any of this.
Over here, it's absolute bankruptcy.
Yep.
And once that's done, it's losing your job probably, not looking out again for what's good for society.
Yeah. And I've also noticed over here that we're all of a sudden, we've dropped into the false advertising again. There was an advert on TV I saw a couple of days ago where they were saying that universal health care for America would cost something like $33 trillion. And I'm sitting there going, hold on, where the heck did you get that number from?
Straight out of the air.
Yeah, it reminded me of the old joke that out of all statistics, 99.7 of them are pulled straight from the air.
And especially when you're talking about the ultra-right that have their financial agenda to push no matter what. We were talking outside, like you'd mentioned. There are the conglomeration of our society right now in media and medical.
Yes.
There's only 5-6 people that own all
of it.
Media.
Yeah.
So when you say they give the corporate view, of course they give the corporate view, because they're super billionaires that own the country that are demanding this. It's like we were saying, when you see a Democrat out there that does something, or they call him a socialist. Is the Democratic Party going too far left? Are you really becoming socialist? But you never hear the other side of that. Is the Republican Party becoming too far right? You never hear that question.
Fascist?
Fascist? Yeah, you never hear that.
You never hear that.
Yeah, it's only to the left.
Yeah.
Because the left...
And also, it's a misuse of the word socialism.
Oh, yes.
A total misuse.
People have no clue what
Bernie is
socialism
a social democrat.
Yes, yes.
And for some reason, they don't seem to understand, a social democrat does not make you a socialist.
Exactly. It's like capitalism. There are two forms of capitalism practiced in this country today. There's the form of capitalism that you and I live under, and we all live under, and then there's the capitalism of the super rich, where all profit goes to them, all bills and all expenses go to the working people. There's the two different types, and let me tell you straight out, and I believe this very strongly, that capitalism in its form that's being practiced today is absolutely diametrically opposed to a democratic republic, because they do not believe in a democratic republic. They believe in their control, their values, and they will push them on us. That's why I'm not a politician. I'm just a working person, and I'm sick and tired of this. Bernie has shown us the way, has given us the issues, has given us the platform, and we need to be able to stand up and fight for what's right in this country once again.
I prefer to think of it as a trickle up.
Yeah, right.
The money only ever trickles up. It never, ever trickles down. Yeah. It's funny how that happens, isn't it?
The rich, what they've done is, the whole philosophy was when they get rich enough, money will flow down to us. Well, the only thing they actually really did is they made bigger pockets.
Yes.
Nothing ever flows down. It's not part of the basic premise of capitalism.
And talking of this,
yes,
living wage.
There are so many of us out there that are well-educated people, cannot find jobs in their fields. There are so many people that would love to provide for their families, hardworking people, but they have not been given the opportunity to even go to trade schools, because a lot of that's just been shut down. To have a good, solid democratic republic, you must have a solid foundation and a reverence for all of our people. We live in a multicultural society. Either we start to figure this out, or we're going to fail as a society.
And sadly, I think I'm seeing the failure starting.
That's one of the reasons I'm standing up and trying my best to follow Bernie's lead.
Yes.
And to be able to work with people like you here in the Captain's Lounge, and with so many other good people that I've met on this campaign trail, that all of us have the same feeling. We need to build this country the way it used to be in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. FDR, you know, he was one of my absolute heroes. He saved this country from an absolute collapse. Mm-hmm. By doing so, he created something called the middle class. That middle class had unions. When union wages went up, the entire society went up. And now that they've basically dismantled most unions, they've pulled their teeth, they have no more power. Look at what's happened to our society. I think it's about time we started having a workers' bill of rights like FDR talked about, and we need to also start talking about a maximum wage. When people can make $300,000-$400,000 a day in profit, can I use the word again? Immoral.
Immoral. You know, the trickle-down method was exactly like software releases. All I ever heard was it flying over my right shoulder. For some reason, no matter how much money you got in the bank, $5 billion, do I really need to make another billion?
Exactly.
And it's a psychological thing that I think goes on in their heads that they just cannot stop. They have got no clue how to kick back, open up a Corona, stick a wedge of lime in it, and look at a sunset.
Yeah. This is why I'm looking at this maximum wage idea of mine.
Yes.
If you have a maximum wage, then you're talking about companies, the corporations in this society that take advantage of their workers and do not pay a living wage. This is where I say we start looking at a maximum wage. We can take and tell the corporations, you want to make so much, we're going to tax you if your labor rate, your pay, is below the national average, below a living wage. We're going to tax you for that because our tax money goes to pay for housing, goes to pay for medical, goes to paying for food. We're going to give that corporation its tax bill at the end of the year. You can, if you don't want to pay taxes, give that money to your workers. But when you turn right around, leave your workers in poverty, and then leave the bill to the state to pay, no more. We need to change this.
State or federal.
Yeah, exactly. We need to change this immediately.
Absolutely. Back in the 60s, you could afford to live on a minimum wage. You actually were earning enough to stay ahead, but it never kept up with inflation.
Exactly.
And if minimum wage was actually worked out on inflation, minimum wage would now be something like $25, $26 per hour.
Exactly.
That would be the minimum wage.
Yeah.
Just to break even, stay ahead, and all the rest of it.
Exactly.
And I know people are horrified by that, but yes, if people were earning a real wage, they wouldn't need as many food stamps.
If people had that type of an income, then there would be social justice, at least a lot closer to social justice.
Correct.
Instead of all profit to the rich, all bills to the workers.
Yeah. Well, as I said, trickle up.
Yep.
Phil, is there anything you'd like to cover very briefly before we close this one down?
Here we are in a wonderful state of Colorado. I'm not telling everybody I know all the answers. Heck, I don't even know all the questions. But I'll tell you this, if you know my philosophy of government and governance, if you know how I feel about the people and morality in society, then when something comes up, you won't have to ask yourself, how will my Senator Kelley vote on this? You will know, because you know how I feel about Colorado, its citizens, and our society. And the only thing I can say is I need help in spreading this message. Please get a hold of me, my campaign, and volunteer to help. And let's take Colorado back for the working people and try to make our society a better one for tomorrow and our children.
That was Phil Kelley, who's running for the Senate, District 13 here in Colorado. And of course, everyone here at the Captain's Lounge Studios wishes him well. Vote. 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 And this is a message not just to Democrats, this is a message to everybody. I don't care what your party is, you have got to become active, looking at real news, what's going on, and who's doing it. I'm Nigel Aves, your host. This is Rational Alchemy. Thank you very much for joining us once again at the Captain's Lounge Studios, located right here in Longmont. Goodbye.